Hello everyone and welcome back to K Good Days online lecture series, a smart way of learning. Even you can listen my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast and Anchor. Today we'll be discussing Longinus, especially sublimity in literature. Longinus is also called Dionysius Longinus or Pseudo Longinus. He may be from 1st century AD. The name sometimes assigned to the author of On the Sublime, one of the great seminal works of literary criticism. It is regarded as a classic work on aesthetics and effects of good writing. The treatise highlights examples of good and bad writing from previous millennium, focusing particularly on what may lead to Sublime. Longinus on the Sublime is a critical document of great significance and worth. It is written in Greek. This treatise has come down to us in an imperfect and incomplete form. At least one-third of it is missing, and there are frequent and wide gaps. So we have a very small part of actual work, but that is sufficient to reveal the purpose of author. Longinus' declared subject is rhetoric. Its central argument is sublimity in literature. Now, we'll discuss sublimity in literature. The function of literature in general and poetry in particular was to instruct or to delight even before Longinus. But to instruct, to delight, to persuade, these three qualities may be of historians, orators, and philosophers. Longinus found this three-word formula suitable. He discovered that masterpieces of Greek classical literature were great because of sublimity. Sublimity, according to Longinus, is in distinction and excellence in expression, and it is for this reason the greatest poets and prose writers have gained their eminence and immortal fame. The effect of literature should not to convince, but to transport him out of himself. Longinus critically applauds and condemns certain literary works as example of good or bad style of writing. Longinus ultimately promotes an elevation of style and an essence of simplicity. To quote this famous author, the first and the most important source of sublimity is the power of forming great conceptions. The concept of the sublime is generally accepted to refer a style of writing that elevates itself above the ordinary. Finally, Longinus sets out 5 sources of sublimity: great thoughts, strong emotions, figures of speech, noble diction, and dignified arrangement of words. Effects of literature should not to convince, but to transport him out of himself. An admirable speech casts a spell over the audience and eclipses that which aims at persuasion and pleasure. No instruction or no delight or no persuasion can be the test of great literature, but to transport, that is the capacity to move the reader to ecstasy or a state of extreme happiness, must be the test of great literature. It may be because of irresistible magic of speech. If a reader is spellbound by what writer says, then only it can be a great literature, so that a reader cannot think or feel except what the writer thinks or feels. This work has the quality of sublime. Plato had doubts whether it is good to be moved or not. But Longinus doesn't think so. He has no doubt in his mind. But by moving power of literature can get sublimity, not by power to instruct, or to delight, or to persuade. For all these, there should be willing cooperation of reader. It is power of speech, when it is sublime, that is not only pleases, but also excites, moves, transports, and elevates. It does like this not once, but every time it is heard or read. Longinus says, sublimity always please, and please to all, that is sublime in literature. When men are different in their habits and tastes and pursuits, aspirations, and of different ages, hold the same view about the same writing, it is the verdict of a writer. He has discussed some sources of sublime in his treatise on the Sublime. According to Longinus, both nature and art contribute to sublimity in literature. There are those who held that the sublime is innate and cannot be acquired by teaching. Nature is only art of producing it. A writer's natural powers were enfeebled by rules and precepts. But Longinus found that howsoever free and independent nature might be, she worked according to a system which brings light. Art cooperates with the nature to the same purpose. Art is perfect when it seems to be nature, and nature hits the mark when she contains art hidden within her. With this, Longinus found 5 main sources of sublime. First 2 are gifts of nature, and the remaining 3 are gifts of art. First is grandeur of thought, second is capacity for strong emotions, third is appropriate use of figures, fourth is nobility of diction, fifth is dignity of composition. These 5 are the sources of sublimity. Now we will discuss one by one. First is grandeur of thought. None can produce sublime work unless his thoughts are sublime. Sublimity is the reflection of greatness of soul. Sublimity is not possible to those whose life is mean, and mean ideas and habits to produce any admirable and worthy of immortal life. It is natural that great accents should fall from lips of those whose thoughts have always been deep and full of majesty. Stately thoughts belong to loftiest minds. Mostly ideas are innate and natural condition of writer's mind and heart, but these ideas can be acquired by proper discipline. It can be done by dwelling on whatever is noble and sublime and imitating examples of great masters. According to Longinus, it is good for us too when we are working at some subject with demands of sublimity of thought and expression, to have some idea in our minds as to follow Homer might have expressed the same thought. If we have such great examples before our eyes, it will illuminate our path and will lift our minds. Sublimity of expression is linked with sublimity of thoughts. So effect of transport can be caused by noblest thoughts finding their natural expression in the noblest language. The question is whether it is good to be transported out oneself. Answered that is good because literature that takes such hold on us is nurtured on noble and sublime in life and literature. It has an elevating effect both morally and artistically. Greatness of thought is its first condition. There is close similarity between Longinus and Milton. Milton believes that if anyone wanted to be a great poet, he ought to himself to be good and true poem, that is composition and pattern of best and honorablest thing. The second source of sublimity is capacity for strong emotions. This is the second natural source of sublimity according to Longinus. There are scattered remarks in the work which throw light on what he thought of emotions as an important factor of sublimity. For Grandeur, there should be true emotions at right place. It inspires the words as it were with a wild gust of mad enthusiasm and fills them with divine frenzy. For stately thoughts, stately emotions are necessary. It should belong to loftiest soul. They also lead to loftiest of utterances, but all they have to be true emotions and in right place. Longinus challenges Plato's doubt as emotions as men's guides. Aristotle testifies emotions as it has cathartic effect which is more moral than aesthetic consideration. Longinus values them primarily for aesthetic transportation and this transport is morally uplifting. So, he offers more artistic explanation of emotional appeal of literature. Third source of sublimity is appropriate use of figures. To have sublimity in literature, figures of speech are important. Longinus' concern oratory in which happy or unhappy use of figures makes all the difference. Figures of speech play important role in producing grandeur. Longinus does not regard figures of speech as an unnatural imposition of speech. It is just for ornament's sake with an element of strangeness into what one speaks or hears every day. They satisfy the basic demands of human nature and it is pleasant surprise. But there is an element of artifice in them that tend to raise suspicion in the mind of reader that speaker is treating him like a silly boy and trying to outwit him by cunning figures. This handicap disappears in style that is elevated in other ways because they increase the effect of elevation. So it helps to hide their artifice in the same way as the light of sun eclipses dimmer lights. A figure of speech is effective only when it appears in disguise, when it is shaded by brilliance of style. In plain style, it makes all the show and it sheds all utterances. The main figures of speech that are important for sublimity are rhetorical questions, ascendanton, hyperbaton, and periphrasis. Rhetorical question, either a statement in question form that suggests its own answer. It makes straight appeal to passion. Ascendanton is a speech in which words or clauses which should be connected by conjunction are left unconnected. For example, now where is revenue which is to do all these mighty things? 5/6 repelled abandoned, sunk, gone, lost forever. Where rapid flow of unconnected verbs suggests excited mood in which they are uttered, which is likely to induce the same mood in the hearer or reader. Hyperbaton is inversion of disordered utterance made under an emotional strain and falling with an effect on hearer or reader. For example, Macduff in Shakespeare's Macbeth comes at the appointed hour to call on Duncan and finds him lying dead in a pool of blood in his bedchamber. Only broken words can fall from his bewilderment more effectively than if they had followed their normal order. O horror, horror, horror! Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee. So, this is the example in Shakespeare's Macbeth where there is a rapid flow of unconnected verbs suggest excited mood of the character. Paraphrasis is a roundabout way of speaking. Among its commonplaces, examples are fair sex for womankind and better half for wife. So, figures can add the effect of sublimity, but it should be used suitable to context. The fourth source of sublimity is nobility of diction. Longinus turns his attention to diction, which comprises proper choice of words, the use of metaphors and ornamented language. Words, when they are suitable and striking, there can be moving and seductive effect upon the readers. Words are first thing in style to lend it grandeur, beauty, mellowness, dignity, force, power, and a sort of glittering charm. Words breathe vice into a dead things. Words are the light of thought, a radiance that illuminates the innermost recesses of writer's mind. Imposing language is not suitable for every occasion. When object is trivial, words should not be so grand. Among the ornaments of speech, hyperbole and metaphor can be used. Aristotle limited a number of metaphors, not more than two at a time, but Longinus finds no justification for it. Metaphors being the language of passion, passion alone, and no arbitrary rule can determine how many have to be used at particular time. No writer, when he is impassioned, has time to count the number of metaphors he is using, nor has a reader when he is carried out by an impassioned utterance. He considers metaphor as a valuable aid to sublimity in style. On hyperbole, he has just observation to make that it should be natural outcome of emotion, and like all great art, it should appear in disguise. The last source of sublimity is dignity of composition. Longinus considers the arrangement of words. There should be blend of thought, emotion, figures, and words to have the effect of sublimity. There should be a harmonious whole. Such arrangement has not only a natural power of persuasion and giving pleasure, but also marvelous power of exciting the soul and swaying the heart of men. It makes the hearer or reader share the emotions of the speaker. But if the elements of grandeur be separated from one another, the sublimity is scattered and made to vanish. When organized into a compact system and still further encircled in a chain of harmony, they gain a living voice by being merely rounded into a period. A harmonious composition only makes up for deficiency of other elements. A proper rhyme is one of the elements of this harmony. Negatively, deformity and not grandeur is a result of composition is either extremely concise that cripples the thought or unduly prolix that overextends it. So, Longinus thinks that the arrangement of words, the arrangement of the text should be pleasure giving. It should excite the soul of the reader or the audience. It makes the hearer or reader share the emotions of the speaker. So, the element of grandeur be spreaded from one another. The sublimity should not be scattered. The figures of speech should be in disguise, and the text should have the capacity to transfer. It should not only give the pleasure, but there should be capacity to transfer the audience. So thank you for watching this video lecture. You can subscribe my YouTube channel to watch more videos, or you can subscribe my podcast Different Colors of Life with Kiran on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast and Anchor. Thank you.